The wagon wheels groaned over the dry ridge, kicking dust into the dying sun. Wind whispered across the canyon rim, hot and empty, like it already knew what was about to happen. Emmeline's hands were bound tight with rawhide, her lips cracked, face smeared with dirt, hair tangled like a bird's nest caught in barbed wire. She lay in the back of the wagon, blinking against the sun, trying not to cry. Crying never helped. Not with him. Clive Darnell spat tobacco as he yanked the reins, stopping the mule team near a steep drop. He didn't look back at her, not even once. "Get up," he muttered. Emmeline tried to sit, but her legs were stiff, numb from the ropes. "I said get up." When she didn't move fast enough, he grabbed her by the arm and threw her into the dirt. Her shoulder hit rock. She gasped, but he was already tossing a moldy blanket and a tin canteen after her like garbage. "That's all you get. You should have kept your mouth shut in Deadwood." Her voice trembled. "Clive, please." He turned, eyes dark and hollow like the bottom of a whiskey bottle. "You ain't my blood. Your mama married a fool and now she's in the ground for it. I got no use for a whining girl with no coin and no manners." She tried to crawl to her knees. "Don't leave me out here alone." He swung back into the saddle, boots slamming against the stirrups, didn't even glance down. "Better learn to pray, girl." Then he rode off. The wagon disappeared behind a veil of dust, swallowed by the horizon. The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Emmeline collapsed onto the hard earth, clutching the blanket like it meant something. Her wrists burned, her throat ached. The sun sank lower. Coyotes began to howl, and still she whispered into the wind over and over like a child with a broken doll. "Don't leave me out here. Don't leave me." But no one answered. Only the dust. Only the dark. Only two.
A long, cruel night. Morning cracked the sky open with gold and blood-orange streaks. Heat already shimmered off the rocks, and the wind carried the dry breath of the desert. Emmeline didn't move. She lay curled beneath the rough blanket, lips blistered, skin raw, the canteen empty. The coyotes had come close in the night. She still felt their breath on her neck. Her voice was gone now, worn to a rasp by prayers whispered to a God she wasn't sure was listening. Then, hoofbeats, slow, heavy, deliberate. A horse crested the ridge. The rider was broad-shouldered, cloaked in a worn duster with a rifle strapped to his saddle and dust on his boots. Rhett Callahan, a rancher most folks forgot existed, tucked away past Cotton Ridge, where the land was still wild and unforgiving. He spotted her from his saddle, just a bundle of bones and fabric in the dirt. "Whoa, girl," he said, pulling the reins as his mare snorted. Rhett dismounted slow, quiet, like he didn't want to spook a wounded animal. He knelt beside her. "Ma'am?" Her eyes fluttered, sunken, wild. "Water," she croaked. He unslung his canteen and pressed it to her lips. She drank like it hurt, but didn't stop until she coughed. "What's your name?" Emmeline." "Who did this to you?" She flinched, didn't answer. Rhett saw the rawhide burns on her wrists, the bruises, the way she shrank from his shadow. "You tied up when they left you?" She nodded, slow, shame thick in her throat. Rhett pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Then he saw it, just below her collarbone, half hidden by dirt. A scar. A brand, small, burned into the skin. His breath caught. He knew that mark. Outlaws. Human trade. The same ring that took his niece years back. He looked down at her. A girl someone had thrown away like trash, but she was breathing, still fighting, still here. "I'm taking you with me," he said. No, I ain't asking.
Then he lifted her into his arms. She barely weighed more than the blanket. Rhett mounted his horse, holding her close as the desert wind pressed against them. Behind them, the canyon swallowed her suffering. Ahead, a chance. Maybe the only one left. Cotton Ridge rose like a promise out of the dust, a patch of green and timber tucked between sunburnt hills where windmill blades creaked and horses grazed in golden silence. Rhett's mare trotted slow through the front gate, her rider cradling the broken girl against his chest. Emmeline stirred once, then faded again, too weak to fight, too sore to fear. The ranch house stood quiet under the noon sun, weather-worn wood, porch swing swaying, a lantern still hung from the rafter, dusty but whole, like the place had stood through storms and would stand through more. Martha met them at the door, apron on, shotgun tucked under one arm. "Found her east of the canyon," Rhett said. "Left for dead." Martha's eyes narrowed. "You know who she is?" "No, but I seen what they did to her." Together they laid Emmeline on the old couch by the fire. Martha fetched water, tore linen for bandages. Rhett stoked the flames low, just enough to chase the cold from her bones. Night came fast. Rain tapped the windows, not hard but steady, like a lullaby the land hadn't heard in weeks. Emmeline blinked awake, startled by the warmth. "Where?" "You're safe," Rhett said. "This is my ranch." She tried to sit up. Pain stopped her. He poured soup into a tin bowl and handed it over. "Eat what you can." Her hands trembled. "I don't have money. Didn't ask for any." Silence sat between them, thick as smoke. That night, after she drifted off again, Rhett sat alone by the fire, staring into the flames. Martha leaned on the doorway behind him. "You know trouble don't come far behind a girl like that," she said. "I know." "You ready for that?" He didn't answer right away. "She's got that look," he finally muttered. "Same one my niece had before they took her, like the world's already buried her." He stood, Wally, Ked to the window and looked out across the dark fields. The wind had shifted. Something was coming. In the other room, Emmeline murmured in her sleep, a sound like a prayer or a warning. And still, the rain fell, soft, relentless, cleansing the dust, but not the danger. The third day brought heat again, dry, brittle heat that cracked wood and coiled snakes from the grass. Emmeline stood on the porch in a dress too big for her frame, staring out at the open road like it owed her something. She didn't hear the hooves until they were close. Rhett did. He stepped out the front door, rifle in hand, eyes hard. Dust trailed behind 3 riders coming fast, one of them sitting tall, mean, and drunk on his own legend. Clive Darnell. He dismounted slow, grinning like a snake. "Well, I'll be damned," he drawled. "Thought I lost my little bird." Emmeline froze. Her fingers dug into the porch rail. Clive's boots crunched over the dirt as he walked forward, spurs jangling. She ran off, got confused. "But she's mine, always has been." "She ain't yours," Rhett said. Calm, firm. Clive's smile faltered. "You got no claim. Neither do you." One of Clive's men shifted, hand near his belt. Rhett didn't blink. He just raised the barrel of his rifle 1 inch higher. "She came here half dead. You left her to rot in the canyon." Clive spat. "I left her where she belongs." Inside the house, Martha held her breath, her hand wrapped around the handle of a skillet like it was a weapon. Emmeline stepped forward, voice trembling. "I ain't going with you." Clive's eyes snapped to her, his jaw clenched. "You talk like you got choices now." "I do." For a second, no one moved. Then Rhett stepped off the porch, slow and deliberate. "You ride now," he said, "or I plant you where you stand." Clive studied him. That drunken confidence cracked for just a flicker of a moment. Then he sneered. "Your geese are boss for. Want to regret this, rancher." "Already do." Rhett muttered. "I let you get this close." Clive turned, climbed into his saddle, and rode off with his men, but his voice lingered on the wind. "We'll be back." Emmeline sank to the steps as the dust settled. Rhett sat beside her. "You all right?" She shook her head. "He won't stop." Rhett's hand found the rifle again. "Then neither will I." And behind them the door creaked shut, like the house itself was holding its breath. The next morning, Rhett hitched the wagon. Emmeline climbed in slow, her fingers still shaking as she wrapped them around the edge of the seat. They didn't speak much. The road into town was long and quiet, flanked by sun-bleached fences and fence posts marked with bullet holes. Smoke curled from chimneys as they rolled into Briar Gulch, a town built on dust and secrets. Folks stared, not at Rhett, they were used to his silence, but at her. Word traveled fast and gossip traveled faster. Outside the sheriff's office, Emmeline hesitated. "You sure?" Rhett asked. She nodded once. "If I don't say it now, he'll do it to someone else." Inside, Sheriff Amos Tucker leaned back in his chair, boots crossed, eyes sharp beneath a gray hat. A star gleamed on his chest, dull from years but still firm in meaning. Rhett tipped his hat. "She's got something you need to hear." Tucker studied Emmeline like he already knew half the story. She swallowed hard. "Clive Darnell. He's not just a drunk. He sells women. Trades them to men out past the hills. I was one of them." Tucker's jaw tensed. His voice dropped. "You got proof?" "He left me for dead." "That ain't proof," he said, not cruel, just tired. "It's a start. But men like Clive, they got friends, bought judges, paid ears." "I got this," she said, and tugged at her collar. Rhett turned away, jaw clenched. The brand showed, raw, red, healed only in flesh, not in memory. Tucker stood. "That's the mark from the old Harker ring. They were supposed to be wiped out 6 years ago." "They weren't," Rhett said. "They just changed names." The sheriff stared at Emmeline a long moment. "I can help, but I need to catch him dirty, real dirty. Until then, stay put and stay alert." On the ride home, Emmeline kept her eyes on the horizon. "What if the law ain't fast enough?" she asked. Rhett looked ahead, the reins loose in his grip. "Then we hold the line." That night they lit every lantern on the ranch, bolted every shutter, loaded every rifle. The prairie was quiet. Too quiet. And in that stillness, the dark began to crawl. Midnight wrapped the ranch in black velvet. The wind moaned through the barn rafters, rattling boards and stirring the scent of hay. Emmeline lay huddled in the root cellar, blanket over her head, heart hammering. Outside, the prairie was empty, too empty. Then came the first flicker. Torches, distant glows bobbing over the horizon, growing closer with every heartbeat. Clive Darnell and his gang riding like shadows out of hell, shouts carried on the wind, slicing the silence. Rhett stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, eyes scanning. The horses whinnied and pawed the dirt. Flames from the approaching torches reflected in the gang's cruel grins. "She's mine," Clive bellowed. "I said she's mine, Rhett." "Not tonight," Rhett growled, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "Not ever again." Gunfire cracked the night. One of Clive's men fell, dust and sparks flying where he hit the ground. The barn door shuddered under a shot, then splintered. Smoke poured into the yard as flames licked the roof. Emmeline pressed herself further into the cellar wall. She could hear every footstep, every cursed word, every command Clive barked. Her stomach knotted, a scream lodged in her throat. Rhett fought with precision, taking down another outlaw before the gang split. A shadow moved too close. Clive himself, knife drawn, eyes wild. "You think you can stop me?" he spat. Rhett met him, arm wounded but firm. "I don't think," he said. "I know." The clash was brutal. Dust, sweat, and fire swirled together. Clive swung his knife, but a sharp crack of wood and Rhett's foot in the right place sent him stumbling back. From the ridge came a sharp whistle, cutting the tension like a blade. Lanterns flickered, sheriff and deputies charging across the field. Clive's men panicked, tossing torches as they ran. Clive cursed, retreating into the night. "This isn't over," he shouted. Rhett leaned against the porch post, blood running from his arm, but chest rising with relief. He peered into the cellar. Emmeline's wide eyes met his, trembling, voice barely audible. Are they gone?" "They are now," Rhett said softly. His hands found hers through the blanket. "You're safe. For tonight. And the next night. And the ones after." Outside, the fire sputtered, sparks drifting into the sky like tiny stars. The prairie wind carried the last echoes of Clive's rage, leaving only smoke, silence, and the faint, steady heartbeat of hope. Dawn crawled over Cotton Ridge in pale streaks, painting the ranch in muted gold and shadow. The smell of smoke lingered from the barn fire, curling around the posts like a stubborn ghost. Rhett sat on the porch, arm wrapped with a bloodied cloth, eyes scanning the horizon, alert and exhausted. Emmeline emerged from the house, hair still damp with sweat, eyes wide. "He's gone?" she asked, voice trembling. "For now," Rhett said, voice low but steady. "But the law rides close today." By mid-morning, Sheriff Amos Tucker and 2 deputies thundered down the ridge on horseback. Dust kicked up behind them, horses snorting, hooves drumming like war beats. Rhett met them at the gate. "Found what you were looking for?" Tucker asked, eyes sharp under the brim of his hat. Rhett nodded, jerking toward the trail Clive had taken. "Trail leads east. They won't hide long." Days blurred into tense rides. The deputies followed the gang's tracks across scorched plains through narrow canyons where shadows moved like predators. Then came word from Red Rock Pass, a shootout. Clive and his men had been cornered, guns roared, smoke filled the air, and when it cleared, Clive was in chains, battered and cursing, his men either captured or fleeing into dust. Back at the ranch, Emmeline stood on the porch, trembling but determined. She would testify. Her voice would be heard. In the courtroom, Judge Halbrook presided with the weight of the law heavy on his shoulders. The gallery murmured as Emmeline recounted her nightmare. Bound, beaten, left for dead, and yet alive. "He left me to rot," she said, voice breaking but firm. "But I survived." Clive sneered from the dock, trying to mask the fear creeping into his eyes. The gavel fell like thunder. "Mr. Darnell," the judge said, voice hard as oak, "you are sentenced to hang by the neck until dead." Outside, the air smelled of rain and dust. Rhett stood beside Emmeline, hand brushing hers. She exhaled, a mix of relief and disbelief. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Rhett said, looking out at the horizon. "You did it. You survived. That's the fight that matters." The prairie stretched endlessly before them, wild and untamed. Justice had arrived, not swift but relentless, and somewhere in the wind, the echoes of Clive's threats faded, leaving room for something new, hope, hard-earned and real. The ranch slowly healed. The barn stood rebuilt, timber fresh, smell of sawdust mixing with hay. Horses nickered softly in the paddock, and the air carried a calm that hadn't touched Cotton Ridge in months. Rhett's arm was bandaged tight, muscles sore but mending, and the quiet crackle of the fireplace in the house felt like a heartbeat returning to life. Emmeline moved cautiously through the rooms, learning the rhythm of the ranch. Her steps were tentative, at first the memory of bruises still stiff in her shoulders. She brushed dust from shelves, arranged blankets, and even smiled when a stray kitten rubbed against her leg, small victories, proof she